I used to joke that he was too quiet for polyamory, that he'd drown in the noise of desire, in the chaos of open hearts. I said it with a laugh, a little cruel, a little smug. He just smiled, like he always did. That calm, patient kind of smile that made me feel both adored and unseen. Now I watch him walk into rooms that used to orbit around me, and everyone turns toward him instead. They lean closer. They laugh at his stories. Stories that used to be ours. He's become this mystery wrapped in gentleness, while I'm the one standing outside, pretending I don't notice the shift. Maybe I wanted too much attention. Maybe I forgot that love isn't a performance. Or maybe he learned how to glow without needing my light. Would you still love someone who outgrew your version of them? And what if you were the one who taught them how? I remember the night it started to change. We were at a poly mixer downtown. A blur of soft lights, open laughter, and too many eyes searching for connection. I'd always been the one to draw attention. I knew how to fill a room with stories and tease hearts into opening. But that night, something shifted. He wasn't standing behind me anymore, waiting for me to leave. He was standing beside someone else, listening like it was an art form. There was a gentleness in the way he leaned in, a warmth that felt like safety, not seduction. And I realized, for the first time, that people weren't falling for his words. They were falling for his stillness. The kind of quiet that makes others feel seen. And I hated how beautiful that looked on him. Later that night, I told myself it didn't matter. That what we shared was built to expand, to bend without breaking. That's what I'd preached, hadn't I? That love wasn't a cage. But watching him talk about the stars on the balcony, his voice low and easy, I felt something inside me twist. I used to think jealousy was proof of ownership, but this was different. It wasn't about wanting to claim him. It was the sudden fear of being forgettable. He looked up at the sky and said something about how every person we love adds a new constellation to our story, and I laughed, pretending I wasn't wondering if I'd already burned out of his sky. In the days after, he started getting messages, people inviting him to coffee, to game nights, to slow conversations about boundaries and dreams. I used to think he wasn't built for this world, that he was too sincere, too patient. But sincerity became his magic. In a sea of open hearts competing for attention, his stillness became rare, almost sacred. He never chased anyone, and that's exactly why they chased him. Meanwhile, I found myself louder, brighter, trying too hard to be noticed again. It's strange how polyamory can hold both abundance and scarcity at once. How you can be surrounded by love, yet starve for the one gaze that's no longer yours. I started replaying everything I'd said to him. The teasing, the way I dismissed his hesitations when we first opened our marriage. You'll catch up, I told him. You'll learn to love the chaos. But maybe he didn't need chaos to feel free. Maybe I was the one addicted to being wanted. The truth hit me one night when I saw him leave a party early, walking home under streetlights. Not with anyone, just peaceful. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He had already arrived, and I realized then that I'd mistaken his quiet for weakness, when all along, it was strength. There's a strange silence that follows realization, the kind that hums under your skin like a bruise. I woke up next to him one morning, sunlight pouring through the curtains, his arm draped around me like nothing had changed. But everything had. I could feel the distance, invisible, but alive, threading between our breaths. When he smiled at me, it wasn't the same smile that used to seek my approval. It was calm, grounded, almost whole. I used to think I wanted him to grow, to explore, to open up. But now that he had, I felt like the world had tilted, and I didn't know where to stand anymore. Love is supposed to expand, but no one tells you what to do when it expands without you. I started going out more, pretending I was fine. I met new people, flirted, danced, laughed too loudly. All the things I used to love, but it felt like acting in a play where the lines no longer fit. Every conversation felt thin, every touch missing something real. And the more I tried to feel wanted again, the more I missed his quiet steadiness. The way he'd listen without interrupting. How his silence made space for my chaos. I caught myself comparing everyone to him, and that's when I knew the power had shifted. I'd spent years teaching him how to love freely. Now I was the one learning how to be enough. One night I asked him how he was feeling. Really feeling. He looked at me, thoughtful, and said he was happy. Not ecstatic, not overwhelmed, just happy. I feel like I finally know what peace feels like. And it broke me, because peace was something I'd never learned to live with. I wanted passion, intensity, fireworks. Not this steady flame that burned without asking for air. I realized how loud I'd been, how much I'd confused attention for affection. And now, sitting across from him, I wondered if I'd ever made space for him to exist as himself, or if I'd just filled every silence before he could. The next time we went to a gathering, I didn't try to stand out. I watched instead. The way he made people comfortable. How his presence grounded the room. A few of his partners came up to me, kind and curious, wanting to connect. I smiled, but something inside me felt raw. For so long, I thought polyamory meant never being left behind. That openness meant equality. But watching him move through the world, I understood that freedom doesn't promise fairness. Some hearts simply shine in ways you can't compete with. And maybe the hardest part of loving openly is realizing that sometimes love opens only for one of you. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept turning over the words, too boring in my mind, tasting how cruel they'd been. I'd said it because I was afraid. Afraid that his gentleness would expose how much of mine I'd buried. And now, watching him become the person everyone felt safe with, I saw the truth. He wasn't boring. He was brave enough to love without spectacle. I wanted to tell him I was sorry, but the words felt too small. So instead, I lay beside him, listening to his breathing, wondering if he could feel my apology in the way I finally stopped reaching for control and just let him be. It started quietly, the kind of tension that hums under conversations, invisible but heavy. We sat across from each other at breakfast, talking about schedules and errands, but every word felt like a placeholder for what we weren't saying. He looked at me the way you look at a photograph, familiar, distant, full of things that once were. I wanted to ask him if he still loved me, but I didn't want to hear him hesitate. Instead, I smiled, told him the coffee was good, and tried to swallow the lump of fear sitting in my chest. Love doesn't always end in arguments. Sometimes it fades through polite smiles and half-finished sentences, until silence becomes the only thing you both understand. That evening, he told me he'd been invited to a weekend retreat. Something about deep connection and mindful intimacy. He asked if I wanted to join, but his tone told me it was okay if I didn't. I said no, pretending I had plans, pretending it didn't sting that he no longer needed me to say yes. I watched him pack his bag, careful and methodical, humming softly. There was nothing secretive about it. That was the worst part. He wasn't hiding anything. He was simply living. And I realized then that I wasn't jealous of the people he'd meet. I was jealous of the peace he carried wherever he went. When he left, the house felt too big. I walked through each room like a ghost revisiting the life I'd built and then outgrew. I opened his closet, the faint smell of his cologne still lingering, and it hit me. I'd loved him best when he needed me, when I was the center of his world. Now that he didn't, I didn't know who I was to him anymore. Maybe that's what growth does. It demands you face yourself without the scaffolding of someone else's admiration. I sat on the floor of our bedroom and cried, not because I'd lost him, but because I was terrified of meeting myself without his reflection. He came back on Sunday night, smiling in that effortless way that used to calm me. I asked him how it was, and he told me it felt healing, like remembering something he'd always known. I tried to be supportive, but my voice cracked halfway through a sentence. He looked at me then, really looked, and asked if I was okay. I wanted to scream that I wasn't, that I'd built this life for both of us and somehow ended up outside of it. But instead, I whispered, "I'm proud of you." And it was true. Pride and pain can live in the same breath. Sometimes love means watching someone bloom in a garden you no longer fit in. Later that night, we lay in bed, facing opposite directions, our backs almost touching, but not quite. The air between us felt like a question neither of us wanted to answer. I closed my eyes and thought about the first time I told him I loved him. How certain I'd been that I'd never hurt him. And yet here we were, tangled in the quiet consequences of love that grew unevenly. I used to think polyamory was about freedom, but now I see it's about truth. The kind that doesn't always set you free, but strips you down until there's nothing left but what's real. The confrontation didn't start as an explosion. It began as a question. We were cooking dinner together, the sound of onions sizzling in the pan, the smell of garlic filling the air. I asked him if he ever missed how we used to be. He paused, knife midair, eyes searching mine like he was afraid to answer. "Sometimes," he said, "but I think we've both changed." It was such a simple truth, and yet it hit harder than any fight could have. I wanted him to say he missed me, not the version that used to fit him. I stirred the pot too hard, the sauce splattering across the stove, and suddenly all the quiet pretending broke apart. "I taught you how to love like this," I said, voice trembling, "and now everyone gets the version of you I dreamed up." He didn't raise his voice. He never does. He just looked at me with that quiet steadiness that now feels like a mirror I don't want to face. "You didn't teach me how to love," he said softly. "You just gave me permission to try." The words lingered in the air, slow and deliberate, cutting deeper than anger ever could. I wanted to argue, to reclaim some piece of what I'd built, but the truth was too clear. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He was just telling me what was real. And that's what made it hurt most, the way honesty doesn't need volume to leave you undone. I walked away from the kitchen into the living room where everything felt too familiar. The couch we bought together, the plants I used to water, the photos from a time when love was still simple. He followed me quietly. No footsteps heavy enough to announce blame. "You're angry because I stopped needing you," he said, voice low but steady. I wanted to deny it, to say I just missed us. But the truth pulsed beneath every heartbeat. I had built my confidence on being desired. Now I had to build it on being enough for myself. And I wasn't ready for that. "Do you still love me?" I finally asked. It came out smaller than I intended, a whisper wrapped in exhaustion. He didn't answer right away. He stepped closer, his voice barely above the sound of the rain outside. "Yes," he said, but not in the way I used to. It wasn't cruel, just honest, the kind of honesty that leaves no room for illusion. I felt the floor tilt beneath me, not because I'd lost him, but because I finally understood that love can stay even when it changes shape. I wanted to hate him for being okay, but all I could do was stand there, listening to the echo of what we used to be. I sat down on the floor, too tired to hold myself together anymore. He knelt beside me, hesitant, as if unsure whether comfort would help or wound. "You were never too boring," I whispered, the confession tasting like salt and regret. He smiled, not triumphant, just tender, and placed his hand over mine. For the first time in months, I felt us both breathing the same air without pretending. Maybe this was what the end of denial looked like. Not an explosion, but a quiet exhale, the kind where love doesn't die. It just stops begging to be understood. Days passed quietly after that night. No fights, no breakdowns, just a calm, unfamiliar rhythm. He started spending more time away. Dinners, hikes, long conversations with people who looked at him the way I used to. And me? I filled the silence with movement. Yoga classes, long walks, a new haircut that didn't suit me yet. Sometimes we crossed paths in the kitchen and smiled, soft and careful, like neighbors who once shared a life. The ache dulled, but never left. I thought healing would feel like forgetting, but it didn't. It felt like learning to stop reaching for what doesn't reach back. I went on a date with someone new. An artist with kind eyes and a nervous laugh. We talked about everything but love. He said he liked how honest I was, and I almost laughed. Honesty had torn my life apart, yet here it was, making me visible again. When he walked me home, he didn't try to kiss me. He just said, "You seem like someone learning how to start over." And for once, I didn't flinch. Maybe healing wasn't about finding someone new. Maybe it was about finding a version of myself that wasn't constantly performing worthiness. Meanwhile, he started hosting small gatherings, not the wild parties I used to throw, but soft ones. Candles, deep talks, music low enough to hear each other breathe. People came not for thrill, but for peace. I stopped by one night just to drop something off, and when I saw him surrounded by laughter and warmth, I didn't feel jealousy anymore. I just felt admiration. He had built something beautiful out of what I once mocked, and in that moment I realized love can outgrow you and still be yours, just in a different way. We talked again one night, sitting on opposite ends of the couch. No tension, no pretense, just two people learning to speak honestly again. He told me he was seeing someone new, and for the first time I didn't feel like breaking. I asked if he was happy, and when he nodded, I believed him. He asked if I was okay. And for once, I didn't lie. "I'm getting there," I said. The words felt real. Maybe love isn't about keeping someone close. Maybe it's about loving them enough to let them become who they're meant to be. Even if that means you're not beside them anymore. Eventually, the house didn't feel haunted anymore. We still shared it for a while, moving like ghosts that had made peace with their past. Some mornings, he'd make coffee for both of us without asking. Some nights, I'd leave the porch light on for him, even when I knew he wouldn't be home until late. It wasn't romance anymore. It was care. Something quieter, but still sacred. Maybe this was the softest version of love. Not needing to be chosen, but still choosing to be kind. Acceptance doesn't arrive like a revelation. It seeps in quietly, like sunlight through blinds on a slow morning. I woke one day and realized I'd gone an entire night without thinking about who he was with or what he was feeling. The ache had softened into something almost tender, a memory I could hold without trembling. We'd built a kind of gentle rhythm, two lives intertwined but no longer dependent. I used to think freedom meant endless options, but now I see it's about peace with what's no longer yours. Maybe this is what growth sounds like. Not fireworks, not heartbreak, just quiet mornings where nothing hurts. I started writing again. Little fragments of thoughts, stories, memories that used to feel too raw. One afternoon, he found a page I'd left on the table. Words about love, loss, and learning to stay soft. He read it quietly, then looked up and said, "You sound lighter." It wasn't a compliment. It was recognition. For the first time, I felt seen not as his partner, but as a person becoming whole. I smiled, realizing that maybe love doesn't end. It just changes form. From passion to gratitude, from need to understanding. We began seeing each other less, naturally, without drama or final words. He moved some things to another place, and I helped him pack, laughing about old memories that no longer hurt. There was no resentment, no blame, just gratitude stitched through the silence. I realized then that endings don't have to destroy you. They can cleanse you. Polyamory had broken me open, but maybe that's what I needed, to stop defining love by possession and start seeing it as presence. To love someone enough to let them go without making it a tragedy. He came by one last time before moving out fully. We sat on the porch, watching the sunset fade into violet and gold. There was no need for closure. It had already happened in small, unspoken ways. He thanked me, not for staying, but for letting him grow. I wanted to say I was sorry again, but instead I said, "You deserve to be seen." He smiled, that same patient smile from years ago, only now I could meet it without guilt. Maybe that was the real ending, not in words, but in peace, shared between two people who finally learned to stop holding each other hostage in love's name. After he left, I sat alone in the house and realized something I'd never understood before. Loving someone deeply doesn't always mean keeping them close. Sometimes it means giving them back to themselves, and maybe that's what he did for me too. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was just there, breathing, alive, whole. The silence that once felt unbearable now felt sacred. I made tea, opened the windows, and let the wind move through every empty room like a blessing. I used to think stories needed a clean ending, a final scene where everything makes sense, where love either survives or dies. But now, sitting here, months later, I know that's not how real endings work. They unravel quietly, like a film reel running out of frames, fading from color to silence. Sometimes I still see him. At gatherings, in passing, in the easy laughter of people who know his warmth now. He always smiles when he sees me, and I smile back. No tension, no ghosts. Just two people who learn to love without needing to own. It's strange. The freedom I once feared feels like home now. I've met someone new, not in the way I expected. No intensity, no rush. Just quiet companionship. We talk about books, cook dinner together, fall asleep on the couch without plans. It feels different, slower, gentler, grounded. Maybe I finally understand what he found back then. Peace isn't the absence of desire, it's the presence of acceptance. I no longer measure love by how much it consumes me. I measure it by how easily I can breathe within it. Sometimes I revisit the words that started it all. Too boring for poly life. I whisper them like a confession to the wind and almost laugh at how blind I was. Boring wasn't the word. Safe was. Steady, true. He didn't need to be loud to be loved. He just needed time to unfold. I think about that often when I meet people now. How much of what we call boring is really just someone not performing for our comfort. I used to chase fireworks. Now I chase calm. And for the first time, I think I found it. We ran into each other at a bookstore not long ago. He was browsing the poetry section, and I was in fiction. We talked for a few minutes about work, the weather, the little joys of ordinary life. When we said goodbye, he hugged me, not out of nostalgia, but respect. As I walked away, I realized that the ache was gone. What remained was gratitude. He taught me that love doesn't belong to us. It moves through us, reshaping everything it touches, and if we're lucky, it leaves us softer than it found us. If someone asked me now what I've learned, I'd say this. Love isn't a stage where you perform your worth. It's a mirror. One that shows you every flaw, every fear, every truth you tried to hide. And when you finally stop performing, when you let love just be, that's when it teaches you who you really are. He taught me that. The man I once called boring. The man who became everyone's favorite story, and maybe mine too. The story of how losing him brought me back to myself. So if you ever love someone who outgrows you, don't fight it. Let them. Because sometimes their freedom is the doorway to your own.